Alright, now we're just gonna start over.
Okay.
And you are?
My name is Tessica Shock.
Alright. And, alright, so you said you came up to your quilting room with your partner and your dogs,
Yes.
and then some other people showed up?
Yes. So really early Friday morning, I got an evacuation notice, text message.
Yeah.
Right before we lost phone signal. And I already had a plan, so I came up into the second story of my garage, which is my quilting studio. It was my partner and I and my 3 large dogs, and we kept checking out the window here behind me to keep an eye on what was happening. By the time we got the evacuation notice, our road was already impassable. It was unsafe to drive a car on because it was a torrent.
Yeah.
So our only option was to seek higher ground here. Just after I finished bringing food and water and supplies up here with my dogs, my neighbor next door had texted me and asked for help. So I assisted her and her 2 small children in getting into their second story garage. I think we're the only 2 houses on the street that have a second story garage. So
Wow.
we're very fortunate for that, but
Yeah.
but most other folks ended up on the roof. So as we were watching the storm get worse and the waters rise, water started coming up the driveway and was within inches of going into our house, which just happens to have a higher elevation on the street itself, and then a little bit higher elevation due to a taller foundation.
Yeah.
And the water was within inches of coming in, but a shed across the street shifted off of its foundation and released water that had started building up. And so my house was spared any inside damage. We just had a little bit of water in the crawl space that we were able to get out with a dehumidifier.
Oh, wow, that's
But we're
awesome.
the last house on the street that's
Yeah.
dry. There's 44 houses on the street. 24 of them were submerged.
Yeah.
And then there's like 39 total that had damage to something, you know. Even ones that weren't fully submerged. Other folks had their foundation and crawl spaces completely flooded, and some of the foundations were ripped out across the street just due to the power of the waters.
Yeah.
So as we're watching the water rise, we looked out and started to see our neighbors floating up the street because the water was so powerful that it was pushing uphill. 2 houses away, there's a family of 4 that ended up swimming at my driveway, and we got them inside. And then once it stopped raining and the waters receded and we started to go and look for each other, we found out that neighbors further down the street had ended up in their attics because when they called 911, they had been advised to go into the attic. But the water had started coming into the attic as well. So several families had to swim back through their house so that they could get up on the roof. There were some neighbors at the very top of the street that were extremely brave and jumped right into action, and they grabbed kayaks and started floating down the street to rescue people out of their attics with axes and get people off the roofs. We have a neighbor that was 80 years old that had just had a hip replacement a few months prior that was rescued off of a roof. Several families with small children, that sort of deal. So it was very harrowing to see my neighbors floating down the street.
Yeah.
And then to find out how many of them came so close to being lost, but fortunately we didn't lose a single person on this street.
That's awesome. Praise God for that, because it sounds like it came on pretty fast and people just weren't prepared.
So we had like a once in 100-year storm the day before. So there was already low-lying areas that I noticed were starting to flood.
Yeah.
And that was the only reason that I was like, I guess I really should grab extra water and non-perishable food. And the evacuation notice that we received was in the middle of the night for most people. And then by the time we got it, our street was already impassable. There was nowhere for us to go.
Yeah, there was no evacuation.
So, thankfully, my neighbor next door with the 2 small children, once the waters receded a bit, we were able to get her and her children evacuated to a shelter. However, the family from 2 doors down that had swam up my driveway, they ended up staying in my quilting studio for about 5 days until they were able to find other arrangements. And it wasn't just them and their 2 teenagers, it was also their 2 dogs and 4 cats. And thankfully I had just gotten a food shipment for my dogs for the whole month, the day before the storm as well. So I was able to feed everyone with the food that we had in our house, and you know, the canned food that they had in theirs. We were able to like pool resources, and my partner and I rode our bikes around to find water when people were opening their taps. There's a Pisgah brewery up the road a bit, about, I don't know, 2 miles maybe. So we rode our bikes there with all the empty water bottles we had to resupply. Because there was absolutely no communication. It wasn't just that we didn't have access to get anywhere because people's cars were entirely flooded. I mean, there were cars that floated half a mile up the road. So not only did we lose transportation reliably because cars were damaged, but the infrastructure was completely gone. The intersection that we use at the top of our street to get to the main thoroughfare had been half taken out by a sinkhole that just opened up. And there were entire swaths of a parking lot that were picked up by the water and just completely shifted. I mean, it was remarkable to see how much damage the water had done. So we were physically cut off and our communications were cut off. And we had no idea when help was coming or if anyone even knew what had happened. I believe that about half the cell phone towers in western North Carolina were taken out. So we would get like maybe a text message out in the middle of the night. You know, it would take hours for it to finally go through. And that was the only way we could check on each other and let people outside of the valley know we were alive. But everyone on the street took care of each other. We're so fortunate that we didn't lose anyone, and that's mostly due to the people on either side of us. You know, we were all shoulder to shoulder in it, and we spent the next couple of days just walking everywhere trying to find food and water. And as communication started slowly coming back online, somebody told me that there was news briefings on all of the local radio stations. So I would turn my car on at the scheduled time and sit and listen to the car radio because I didn't have one in the house. And phones all need cell signal to get a radio station. So I was just hoping and praying that my battery wouldn't die and I would be able to keep getting those updates, because there was just, we felt very, very isolated. And part of that is, you know, mountain life in general. But even though we were cut off and isolated from the rest of the country and even the rest of the state, we still had each other, which, you know, I couldn't ask for better neighbors. Like, we didn't know each other's names September 26th, but by September 27th, the end of the day, once the waters receded, we knew everyone on the street. And we've really been able to build a tight-knit neighborhood here, and that has expanded to the rest of the valley, which is, you know, that's been the best source of support, is having each other and that sense of community. But that community is not enough to get these houses rebuilt and get people back into their homes. So, I mean, those 24 houses that were submerged, nobody can live in those until they're repaired. And we're estimated just to get them repaired, not even to get them appliances and get everyone possessions again. we're estimating like $5 million.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a Herculean task, but we are determined to stick together. You know, if the flood didn't take us from each other, we're not going to let anything else take us away.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw the inside of Jesse's house. I got to talk to him a little bit. And he was actually the one that told us to come up and talk to you. He said that you had basically taken charge of like directing resources within the community, but then also as people came in.
Yes. So when I talk about like sitting in the car and listening to the radio, I was taking feverish notes, and because not everybody had access to it, then I would go and house to house update everyone on where water distribution points were, and that was like within the first week, right? So my willingness to do that kind of evolved as time went on, and we started all meeting regularly, and once I got power and internet back, somebody thankfully was very kind to bring me a Starlink so that I could keep my paying job, but also communicate.
Yeah.
So I started sending daily emails with updates on resources and got everyone's contact information, so I have their phone numbers and I can keep them up to date on stuff. They have mine, so they can let me know what they need. And so that has continued to snowball, and as volunteer groups started coming to help one house, I would ask them, how do I get the help for the rest of these houses?
Right.
And you know, I only have the capacity to do this because I didn't lose everything like the rest of these folks. So I have the time, I have the mental energy, I can make connections. It doesn't, you know, I will do anything in my power to get these people back in their homes at this point. It's been a lot of networking and community building, and now I'm at the point where I'm going to community meetings at the Swannanoa Grassroots Alliance 3 times a week to try and find resources and, you know, hopefully electricians, plumbers, and HVAC guys to come and help out. And I mean, the FEMA assistance that people have been able to get, I think the cap is $42,500, which that would only pay for plumbing and electrical on a house. But then you also have to have HVAC, and that doesn't even begin to cover like all the putback. So we're talking, you know, insulation, sheetrock, flooring, everything needs to come back. Everyone's house is down to the studs. Yeah. And here we are, what is it, 7 weeks later? Yeah. And we still need help getting mud out of the crawl spaces. So, and as winter's approaching, we're trying to make sure that everybody has at least a warm place to stay. And people, you know, 7 weeks is a long time to be displaced, but it's going to be an even longer haul before their house is livable again. Yeah. So I'm also trying to arrange temporary housing for them. And as their situations change, like one of my neighbors was finally reunited with one of her cats earlier this week. Oh, which is a huge, you know, like we are so happy for her.
So did the cat take off, or?
The cat's been around the neighborhood. A lot of the families had to, when they evacuated to their attic, they took their pets with them. Yeah. And when they were being rescued from the roof or from the attic, the pets stayed in the attic. Even though it was starting to flood, it wasn't, you know, they were safe there. Yeah. And then we had to wait for waters to recede to start getting pets. I mean, the dogs, people were able to get out through the holes that they had to cut in the roof because dogs can swim.
Yeah, trying to get a cat to cooperate with anything in a flood.
So we're still missing a few cats, but we have traps, and you know, I'm walking the neighborhood every day to see who I can find, basically. But yeah, so my neighbor was able to be reunited with her cat, but that also then changes her housing situation because now she has to find a place that will accommodate having a pet. Yeah. But because of the networking that I've been able to do, I immediately, like probably within 6 hours, had at least 2 locations that she could go to.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's a lot of work to try and keep everyone together, and also to keep everyone hopeful, because it is such a long process. It's easy to lose hope, but it's absolutely worth it. You know, I can't imagine, even though I'm seeing it, and I have incredible survivor's guilt because I didn't lose anything physically. I can't even start to imagine what it would be like to have lost all of my possessions, and then also the safety and security that people have of finally having their own house.
Yeah.
And now that space has been taken away, not through any fault of their own. I mean, there was nothing that anyone could have done to prevent this on an individual level.
No, not at all.
And then I also think about how fortunate we are that they built a second spillway for the reservoir.
Yeah.
Because if the county had not built a second spillway for the reservoir in 2020, everyone from Black Mountain, which is 10 minutes in one direction, to Biltmore Village, which is 10 minutes in the other direction, we would have all been dead.
Yeah, it would have just completely washed everything out.
I mean, it was bad enough that it was 28 feet of water.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm still just counting my blessings that project happened, that we have been able to take care of each other and our immediate survival needs, and also the generosity of all the folks from all over the country that have shown up and helped us and given supplies and donations. I have so much gratitude for that, but I know we're going to need that assistance for a long time. I mean, long-term recovery, it's not just homes that need rebuilt, but also businesses are going to have to close because people are having to move, and I'm concerned about the economic depression that's going to come afterwards to this area.
Yeah, some of the businesses were already destroyed.
Yes, absolutely.
Anybody who worked at those businesses, now they can't even financially recover to start doing anything.
Right, yeah. 2 months ago, this place I was like, wow, you know, we're getting a little coffee shop. We have our favorite couple of restaurants that we go to a couple of times a week, all within a half a mile. You know, it really felt like Swannanoa was coming up in the world.
Yeah.
You know, we were establishing ourselves in our community, and then the river destroyed so many of those businesses. And Swannanoa is the affordable place to live in the Asheville area.
Yeah.
I mean, the folks that live here don't have money to rebuild themselves because we were all fortunate enough to find a place to live in the first place. You know, we don't have extra reserves. So, you know, I know that there's a lot going on in the world, but we've been worried since the first day that people would forget about us because of all that's happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's not just going to be like that we need help during the news cycle. We're going to need continued assistance to get through the worst thing that's happened to us.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns. That's why I'm doing this, the videos and stuff, so that I can share that, because by the time I was able to come down here with the missions team, nobody was talking about it anymore on the news. Nobody was talking about it anymore on social media.
Yeah.
It was all about what's going on in other countries. It was all about elections and all of that. And one of my big concerns from being down here is like, okay, there's like been a surge of people coming down now, early on, but it's getting colder. It was in the 30s this morning.
Yeah.
There's people in tents, you know, people trying to live in the houses that aren't livable.
Campers
Campers,
don't necessarily have good heat.
Exactly. And if everybody, even just for the holidays, is like, well, you know, I gotta focus on my family and whatnot in their warm, comfortable homes, nobody down here is gonna have a Christmas like they're used to. If anything at all. I mean,
And it's hard to even think that far ahead.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, as somebody who's living here, I know that we need to think ahead by at least a couple of weeks just so that we can make arrangements and ask for help for things, to give it time to get to us. But we're still living on a day-to-day basis. I mean, the trauma of going through that lives in each and every one of us, and we are all trying to figure out how to get past that so that we can start planning for the future. But it just, we're all still stuck in survival mode, and truly it is still just survival, because so many people have lost income, or now they're having to pay a mortgage and rent to go stay somewhere else. So it's, an incredible financial burden. And when you're under that much pressure, it's hard to think of anything beyond, can I get food for today?
Yeah.
Can I pay rent this week? Which is partially, why I'm trying to take such a big role in organizing, to take some of that pressure off of folks. But I also know that our neighborhood is not usual. Like, we're a lot more organized than other folks have been able to be.
Yeah.
And so there's so many more people in this community in the valley that need advocates, because we don't have the mental space to advocate for ourselves right now.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you trying to bring light to this situation, because it's going to be years before we're back on our feet truly. And I know that there's a lot going on in the world, but it's almost to the point now where when I'm back on social media, I can't be bothered with anything outside of this valley. I'm looking at all of my neighbors' posts and requests and what they're asking for, and trying to connect on a mutual aid level.
Yeah.
Because that's all the bigger our world is right now, is right here.
And that's where, in my opinion, that's where our entire country should be focused on. I mean, I understand that bad things are happening other places in the world, but this is home, and this is, you have to, it's no different than being on a plane. Like, if you don't put the oxygen mask on your face first, like, what good are you to anybody else? If we don't take care of our own people who are living here in our country before we start redirecting any funds or any effort anywhere else.
It's hard to be aware of the greater context of the world, and I think part of what keeps me focused is that even though I know there are horrific things going on everywhere, the place that I can have an impact is here. Other than knowing and talking about what's happening around the world, or even on the other side of the country here, there's nothing I can do about that, but I can help my neighbors and the rest of the folks here in Western North Carolina. So it's not just about knowing what's happening, it's about where you can actually have an impact. And we are so endlessly appreciative of the help that we've gotten. Like, people are having a huge impact here when they come and assist us at this point.
So that's good to hear. Hopefully that will continue to even grow. We get past all the point of, like, the paperwork and all that, and we can actually start getting, because there's several organizations down here, and some of them are a lot bigger than the one that I'm with. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully, I know that Adventures Relief is down here mm-hmm. for the next 2 years at least.
Yes.
I don't know about the other companies, but it sounds like everybody is realizing, if they weren't already planning on being down here long term, they're realizing that they have to be. I was told the other day that Samaritan's Purse has canceled, like, anything else that they planned on doing. So wow. It sounds like people are digging in and getting ready to push this through to the end. And so hopefully the necessary hands and the necessary funds for the materials and whatnot can come through. That way, people who have lost everything, like you said, you were fortunate to own a house. Like if my house burnt or flooded, that's it. The only reason I have a house is because I was able to buy it from my father.
Yeah, I bought my house from my
I couldn't have got a bank
grandparents.
loan. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a position that a lot of folks are in.
Yeah.
And this housing market is extremely tough.
Yeah.
It's, and now, of course, that all the affordable places to live have been destroyed, that has increased demand and decreased supply. So there's a lot of jumps in prices on even rentals. So that's been a difficult thing to overcome as well. But we do have some good programs to locally assist with rent for folks. But I mean, that money has to come from somewhere too.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're not going to be able to keep putting money into each other's, pockets that way, because we're not going to have it soon either.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do appreciate you sharing with me that folks are in the relief organizations are starting to focus on being here for long term, because that's absolutely what it's going to take.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, water and blankets is great, but
Yeah, we don't need any water and blankets. I mean, we do need water because we still don't have potable water.
yeah,
And so that's 2 months, and they're expecting it to be mid-December at the earliest. Like, that's a hopeful thing. And I don't think folks realize how much that adds to your day to just not be able to turn on a faucet.
yeah,
We're having to, I mean, we can turn on the faucet and boil it, but then you have to wait for the water to cool. And then you have to run it through a filter, and just adding that extra stress onto everything else that people are dealing with. I mean, for a basic human need.
yeah,
So we don't have anywhere to store physical donations for people's houses because they don't have a house to put it in.
yeah,
So right now we need professional assistance for those licensed people that we need to have on permits, and we need the funds and money to come in to be able to do the work. So we're looking at solutions for storing, for future use, like furniture and clothing that's being donated, but people just don't even have anywhere to take it home right
people
now.
need sheetrock and insulation.
Yes.
They need, the electrical fixed.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, because like with the disaster relief teams and all that stuff, like as far as like mucking out and gutting out, like any monkey with a hammer and a shovel can do that. Like,
Yes,
like
now
they
we
can
need
send anything.
professionals.
Yeah, professionals have to come, because I mean, first of all, just for the sake of like you were talking about with the permits and stuff like that, you have to have professionals. But even if for people who are like, you know what, screw the permits, I just need to get it done, you can't have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing.
Right, we're looking at the long-term safety, and not just getting somebody in a house. They have to be able to live there and not have it burned down because the wiring, or I mean, even the physical act of going through and wiring stuff, or doing anything with power tools.
Yeah.
If people don't know what they're doing, they're likely to get hurt, and we don't have the hospital infrastructure to support more injuries right now.
Exactly.
And the traffic's terrible. So, how long is it going to take you to get there? Because there's so much going on.
Roads have moved and everything. It's insane.
Roads have moved, as in, like, there used to be 10 different ways to get somewhere, and I've lived here long enough that I know them all, and now I have one way.
Yeah.
And so everybody else also has one way, and we're all kind of funneled through the thoroughfares that have been able to reopen.
I've gotten used to a certain travel pattern down here. There's only like 3 places I go.
Yep.
And, it's one of 2 directions. But that's what I came down to for everyone who lives down here and is used to a normal mode of travel.
And it's not just, like the mode of travel, it's that is also people's access to get out.
Yeah.
A lot of folks in the first couple of weeks couldn't get out to get the supplies because their road was gone.
Yeah.
It was in the bottom of a riverbed. So that's why the mule teams and the helicopter deliveries were so important, because people couldn't even get out. And some access is being restored, but even even road infrastructure takes a very long time to get back to where it was. So,
Oh, yeah, just repaving roads takes forever, so I can't imagine rebuilding the foundation of the
Yes,
road
yes.
and the road.
Yeah, it's taking a lot, and there's been surprising progress on things. Like that sort of infrastructure and the sinkholes that have opened up seems like they were going to be there forever, but even the limited infrastructure that you're experiencing is much better than it was 6 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sure.
So we're grateful for all of the help that has come in and kind of given us something to get back to helping each other out and finding groceries, which is still difficult to find fresh produce. But yeah, sorry, it's a lot to try and wrap my brain around
I'm sure.
all the time. And I'm living in it every day. And also, I'm so sorry, but I do have.
No, that's fine.
I have work.
I appreciate
I'm trying
your
to keep
time.
my paid job.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's good. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you for what you're doing for your community.